Hello everyone. Welcome to English Arcade. In this video, we will understand Pearl S. Buck's The Enemy, Chapter 4 from Class 12 textbook Vistas. In this video, we will learn the following. The author of The Enemy, Pearl S. Buck, was an American writer and novelist. A very prominent personality, she received several prestigious awards including the Pulitzer Prize in 1932 for her novel The Good Earth, and even the Nobel Prize in Literature for a rich and epic description of the life of peasants in China and for her biographical masterpieces. She was also a prominent advocate of the rights of the women and the minority groups. Let's look at the theme of The Enemy. Humanism transcends all man-made prejudices and barriers is depicted beautifully through the characters of Dr. Sadao and Hannah. Significance of professional ethics and social obligation during sensitive times is very beautifully brought out in the lesson, and it also propagates the importance of peace, love, sympathy, and humanism. The story is set in the backdrop of World War II, around the year 1941. So in 1941, Japanese airplanes struck Pearl Harbor, and this attack brought the USA into the World War II. So that's the background information, and with that background, the story begins. Seeing no end to the fierce war, more so with Japan, the USA dropped atomic bombs over the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and that led to the conclusion of the World War II. But the story is set with a backdrop when Japanese were absolutely hostile towards the Americans and were ready to kill an American found in their soil. Let's look at the setting of the story. The story takes place at Sadao and Hana's home on the beautiful coast of Japan. There is this backdrop of the Second World War, which took place in 1931 and went on till 1945. This story most probably is set in the year 1941 following Japan attacking the Pearl Harbor. And at that time, Japanese were very hostile towards the Americans, and Japan and America were part of the World War as enemies. Introduction to the characters. So the main character is Dr. Sadao Hoki, a very skilled and proficient Japanese doctor and surgeon. There's reference to his father, who's not only a true patriot but also concerned about his son's education. Hannah is Dr. Sadao's wife. Tom is an American prisoner of war, a soldier of the US Navy. Then there's this Japanese general of the army. A messenger of the general comes as an officer. There is an old gardener who's spent about a few decades in Dr. Sadao's house. Yumi is the caretaker of Dr. Sadao and Hannah's children, and the cook who has been again working in the house for many years. Let us understand the lesson in detail with the help of this summary. Dr. Sadao's house was built on the Japanese coast. It was a low square stone house set upon rocks well above a narrow beach outlined with bent pines. Sadao's father had a deep concern for his education. So Dr. Sadao had been sent to America at the age of 22 to learn all that he could about surgery and medicine there. He spent 8 years in America and returned to Japan when he was 30 years old. Sadao studied in America and returned with Hana, a Japanese girl whom he had met there. The two of them studied at the same university, met, fell in love, but did not get married in America. They waited to come back to Japan, and they got married in Japan in the traditional manner and finally settled down comfortably. They were happily married and they were blessed with 2 children. It was the time of World War II. Most of the doctors were sent to serve the Japanese army in the World War II on the battlefront, but Sadao was not sent because he was working on a research and also he was wanted by the old general who might need a surgery. So one fine evening, Sadao and his wife Hana find a wounded American soldier on the beach near their house. Americans are enemies, so both Sadao and Hana don't know what to do with him. He belongs to the US Navy, and it's very dangerous to get him to their house at that time of World War II. So while both want to leave him or throw him back into the sea, but they're unable to because Sadao was a doctor, and his first duty as a doctor was to save lives. So both Sadao and Hana experience a dilemma. On one hand, Sadao remembers his duty as a doctor, but on the other hand, he has to be conscious of his duty as a citizen of Japan. Finally, both of them decide to bring him home, treat him, and then hand him over to the police. He is an American prisoner of war, and he has a bullet in his body, which has to be removed surgically. So Sadao decides to perform the operation, and Hana, his wife, though initially reluctant because it was dangerous for all to keep the enemy in the house, joins her husband in assisting him when he operates him in spite of her physical discomfort and hesitation. They have 3 servants in the house: the gardener, the cook, and Yumi, the caretaker of the children. All 3 turn rebellious. All 3 are against the idea of saving the enemy, more so at a time of a brutal war going on. Yumi refuses to wash him or to have anything to do with him. When the servants refuse to do anything for the enemy, Hana takes charge and responsibility of nursing him back to health. Even when the servants leave the house, Hana continues to do work for him. She cooks, she feeds, and even looks after him. Though it is very difficult when the servants leave, but Sadao and Hana share the household work. So Sadao takes care of the children, but also keeps a close watch on the condition of the American soldiers' wounds. Hana is quite disturbed, so Sadao sees his wife in distress and decides to get rid of the Americans soon. The American soldier feels better with each passing day. On the 7th day after his stitches are removed, 2 things happen. First, all servants leave together, and second, a messenger comes from General to call Sadao as the General requires him as he's in pain again. So when Dr. Sadao goes to meet the General, he tells him everything about the American prisoner of war and how he had successfully saved his life. The General is quite impressed with Dr. Sadao because he concludes that Dr. Sadao is so experienced and so skilled that he can save any life. In order to get rid of the American prisoner of war, the General promises to send his private assassins to kill the American and to get his body removed. Sadao waits restlessly for 3 nights for the assassins to come and take away the American, but they do not come, and the American prisoner continues to recover. Finally, Sadao is so tired waiting for the assassins to come that he decides to send away the American and save his life yet again. So he organizes a boat for him, stacks it with food, bottled water, and 2 quills, and he tells the American to row to a nearby island and take help from a Korean fishing boat. He should get into the Korean fishing boat and then he will be safe. After the American leaves, he goes and informs the General that the prisoner had escaped. The General defends himself for his absorption and tells Sadao not to complain about his negligence. He had been negligent. He forgot to send the assassins, and that's why the assassins never came. Towards the end, Sadao remembers all the Americans he had met while he stayed in America. He particularly recalled his time that he spent there and remembers his anatomy professor, his landlady who allowed him to stay in her house when there was so much prejudice against the Japanese. And he wonders why he could not kill Tom, the American prisoner of war. I hope you've all understood the lesson with the help of the summary with the explanation. Let us revise the key points now to understand it even better. Sadao, a Japanese surgeon, and his wife Hana find a wounded American soldier on the beach near their house. Sadao is unable to throw him back into the sea, though he was his enemy, as he was a doctor and his first duty was to save a life. Hana, his wife, though initially reluctant, joins her husband in assisting him when he operates upon him to remove the bullet from his body. Hana assists Dr. Sadao in spite of her physical discomfort and hesitation. Hana nurses the American back to health, even though the servants leave the house and go away. Though it is wartime, Sadao is not sent with the troops to the battlefront, as he is an expert surgeon working on a research, and the general needed him for his own treatment. Sadao goes to meet the general and tells him about the enemy soldier, but the general does not take any action. He is self-absorbed and forgets his promise that he makes to Sadao that he would send his private assassins to kill the enemy and get his body removed. Taking advantage of the general's self-absorption, Sadao decides to send him away from his house while saving the soldier's life again. The soldier is out of danger. Dr. Sadao helps him escape from his house to safety. The general defends himself for his absorption and tells Sadao not to complain about his negligence. Sadao remembers all the Americans he had met while he stayed in America. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it useful, kindly like and subscribe to my channel.